that you're not just here to run a website and keep things humming. You're really here to push boundaries. So don't be afraid to take chances. Don't be afraid to test boldly and challenge assumptions.
VOX Wins. From the growl of a V-twin to the quiet hum of servers, today we're exploring how advanced tech can still honor a heritage brand. I'm joined by Ryan Dennis, former Managing Director of Global E-commerce and Digital Product across parts and apparel for Harley-Davidson. Ryan, many brands still paste the same catalog text everywhere, but optimizing and generating fresh content is a top priority. So what's the very first move to scale copy that still sounds unmistakably like your brand?
Very good question, Richard, and so glad to be here, and thanks for having me. This is a really great place to start, as people are trying to figure out where to go in this world of AI and how do I generate content. Copy is really a great place to start. And it's one of those, as a leader, I often thought, people don't read a lot of this copy. But as I started playing it with the team and really evolving it, it's amazing kind of the returns that you can get out of testing and evolving that, leveraging AI. The way that we really went about it, at Harley-Davidson and with some others that I'm working with, is really starting with training that AI on a prompt library of authentic brand stories, and product descriptions, so that it really understands your brand voice. The next important thing is to also then pair it with kind of different prompts with different lexicons for your product specifications, and also lifestyle cues, that you may know from your past performance. So adding things like technical details, think sizes, materials, classifications, or different features, as well as, things that I think my team always had a list of like the kind of lifestyle and emotional and aspirational language that worked with certain things. Put those in and train the AI on what's worked previously so that it can build off of that, so that it really understands, certain language as well as your brand vibe. Start testing and run outputs through, obviously sentiment and compliance trackers. You want to make sure that, you're sticking things out there that, are aligned with what needs to be legally compliant and on brand. My recommendation is to test and do it in a really kind of iterative and creative way. Again, things that you think people aren't reading, they are. We started, often with product descriptions, and it was amazing, how different the results were with kind of AI enhanced product descriptions. So test everything, test it kind of iteratively through that process, and then, put that back into the AI model so it knows what's working, what's not working, and can continue to evolve on that.
Well said. The devil is always going to be in the details. All it takes is one customer to spot something a little funky before it goes viral. So human auditing is absolutely crucial, especially for models that I think are designed around producing some inherent variance. But I don't know, the episode on temperature and models, we'll save that for the future. And I think all of this perfectly well said for text. On the visual side, generating new images is going to be just as critical as I think, as we're seeing, more of this sort of copy is becoming artificially generated than it takes to actually do a photo shoot or grab out of a stock library. How does one produce fresh on-brand visuals without these constant photo shoots?
Yeah, I think this is kind of the next obvious phase, right? I think copies, it was a scary thing for a lot of people to kind of get moving in that direction. Visuals is another big opportunity, but kind of equally scary, and one that, you want to make sure is really well protected. And until recently also, I feel like AI didn't do a great job of, generating stuff that didn't feel AI, right? You're getting things with 6 fingers and different things that, you might miss for a second and put out there in the world. But I think that the technology is finally getting there. Similar to my recommendation on copy, I think, don't be afraid to experiment and just start small and figure out what works for you. So I think just starting with those 3D renderings of, each of your models, and then, applying AI style transfers for locations or specific backdrops that, really match, your brand or what you're trying to portray, and getting that out there. And then I'd also say, starting to maintain, a really modular accessory library, so that, each accessory changes automatically and is updated with each kind of relative image. It's all about, using AI, testing it, But then you got to have some human eyes on this thing, so reviewing each image set side by side and confirming that it aligns with your brand. And if there aren't six fingers and kind of all sorts of crazy things, continues to be really important in this space. Can't stress it enough that, that is a huge element of the learning and control process. Think if you could train the model and you could start pumping into that and you could reliably pump it into your website and personalize for each person based on, what you know about them or where they're at geographically or whatever it may be, the potential for that is quite significant.
True. 100%. There have been many all-nighters here at Vox
Sure.
thinking and working about the exact same thing. So then we have our content, and that sets the tone online, and there's your brand storytelling. How do you keep both fully aligned with the in-store experience that your customers expect?
And again, one that I've seen is really important, making sure that online voice and experience aligns with, what consumers are getting in store. Because I think we all know this, right? The consumer shopping journey is not linear. It, often starts online, maybe goes in store, maybe reignites on social media, and then is back in store and then back online. And, so if that doesn't feel cohesive and consistent to a certain extent, you lose people. Should say too, don't be afraid to kind of test online and then scale in store. From my experience, using the same storytelling across digital and physical touch points, using that same language, visuals, feel, make sure that's all cohesive. Test online and then, find the winners and sync that with your in-store experience. Whether that's copy or whether that's images. And that obviously helps to reinforce that single brand narrative. And then making sure that, your in-store associates are keeping that branding fresh and, aligned with the season or whatever that trigger point is to swap it out and stay consistent with kind of the ongoing evolution of what you're putting out there digitally is really important.
Impressive. We're talking about so many things you can do now with this technology with an eye to the future. But you've been thinking about the future of this technology for a while, because as I understand it, you oversaw the creation of agentic AI experiences on Harley-Davidson.com.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an interesting moment. I think it was about 2.5 years ago. I was at Palm Springs and at eTail, and all of a sudden I felt like the dumbest guy in the room because everybody was talking about ChatGPT. And I didn't know what it was. My team didn't know what it was. And there was all these people parading around asking me about ChatGPT. And it's like, what is going on here? Which is where I kind of first learned about it. And I remember one of the first things I saw was a really early prototype for a durable goods manufacturer that had this very human-like chat experience. Which really resonated with me because as you try to sell a complex product, having that kind of ability to ask questions, unlock ways to solve your current problems or identify problems that you didn't even know you had was something that I saw as a huge opportunity, at the time for Harley-Davidson. Huge catalog, I think hundreds of black leather jackets that seemingly all look very similar, but have very nuanced and, features that, are really important to consumers. But having in building experiences online that allow consumers to filter through that and understand was something that I saw as a big opportunity. I quickly started kind of talking to different partners in the space, as well as my existing partners, and figured out who's doing what and is anybody doing anything with this, and found really early on that Bloomreach was actually kicking around the idea. And I went to their CEO, Raj, and I said, hey, I heard you guys are working on this. I want in. I want to be bleeding edge on this and would love to work with you guys to bring this to life. So really started, early on with them, building and identifying the use cases, and then how we bring that to life, which you can see today on the Harley-Davidson website. Based on some early results that I'm seeing from some of the Bloomreach case studies, they're seeing some really interesting conversion rate increases for consumers who are engaging with it. So I think there's tremendous opportunity, but again, it's one of those that you got to start now and train and test and learn so that you can kind of really immerse that on your website.
All right. Well, shout out to Bloomreach, friend of the show. Come on the show. We love to give everyone their flowers. Ryan, this is a privilege for us. You've helped define Harley-Davidson across apparel and parts and given such a special perspective. I'd love to hear a hot take or bold prediction you have about the future of retail that might surprise your industry peers.
I think it's really that in the future, the brands that win won't be the ones with the smartest tech. Crazy to say, right? Like as a tech digital guy, I think that's going to be an element that you have to win at. But I don't think necessarily that in and of itself is going to be the differentiator in the future. I think it's really going to be the brands and the experiences that feel the most human. So AI, as we know it, is going to be everywhere. It's going to change how people shop, how people discover, and how brands show up, really makes things faster and more personalized. Also, I think start to make everything feel a little bit the same. I think consumers are going to start to be able to sense what's AI or what's real. I think the potential is that, everything in our lives is going to become so AI. Consumers are going to revolt a little bit and say, all right, I'm almost starting to not trust everything that I experience digitally, or and I really want to get back to something that feels a little more human. Really that human connection will ultimately be the differentiator.
All right, but we're not done getting you off the hot seat quite yet. What about an underrated factor that you think brand experience leaders are overlooking right now, as they're a little bit too focused on AI?
Yeah, for sure. This isn't going to shock you probably where I'm going to go with this one, but obviously right now, brand leaders very understandably are heads down trying to keep up with AI. It's moving so fast. There's so many new tools out there, in addition to just their day-to-day. So a very fair place to be, absolutely laser focused. And obviously trying to figure out which tools are working. There's a lot of noise out there. But there's one thing that I think brands are overlooking. It's, the feeling that people get when they truly connect with that brand, right? Like I worry that everybody's so focused on how do I automate everything that they're missing that element of, again, how do I keep it personal? How do I keep it, meaningful and relevant? In addition to personalization. Personalization will do that to a certain extent, but you still need to have, a strong brand and a humanized experience that, invokes emotion and excitement and energy. It's the story, it's the surprise, it's the human moment that breaks through the noise and really is going to help people, remember you. Like I mentioned, I think we're just at that tipping point, or that tipping point is going to come. Maybe we're not there yet, I don't think, but I think it's going to come sooner than later. So, I think the smart brands out there that are going to really win are going to do, all the right things with AI. They're going to automate the noise. They're going to use AI to handle the repetitive stuff. Think product copy, think testing headlines, think generating content variants, in personalizing the experience on that website. I think the big kind of nuanced element there is then, doubling down on the human craft. So not just taking those efficiencies and those wins and, calling it, a win and stopping there, but really investing that time into what actually builds loyalty, things like better storytelling, more thoughtful community engagement, and experiences that feel more personal and more real, and then bringing back that brand instinct. So letting AI guide the decisions, but not letting it, become the voice in totality. The data doesn't replicate taste. Automation doesn't, replicate intuition. So making sure that you continue to interject that and maybe even doubling down on that in key spaces. The real opportunity for me isn't just about using AI to move faster. That's a thing. We've got to do that. And brands are right to be focused on that. But then using that to clear, headspace and dollars for what really makes your brand unforgettable is, I think, something that, again, brands are going to quickly figure out, if they swing the pendulum too far one way, that they're missing that. So I think it's maintaining that balance, right? And I think you hear a lot of debate out there, like how much is AI going to, replace or augment, or, how do we just find more room for other things? Obviously back in the day when the tractor came around, people were wondering, what am I going to do all day if I'm not plowing the field? And, here we are hundreds of years later, maybe not hundreds, but at least 100. And we're all still plenty busy on things that, people back in that day could have never dreamed of. So it's finding that new way to use your time in a way that continues to drive value that isn't, plowing the field for 12 hours a day.
Of course, the issue at the heart of Vox are leader preferences for how and when they work with vendors. So, Ryan, what early signals do you look for in vendors to know that they're worth your time?
My preference is to really find vendors who are going to continue to be really forward-thinking, strategic partners. Not somebody who's just going to be a point solution that I got to have 35 different vendors to create my experience. I like to find a few that are point solutions for very specific things, and then find a few that can also help me really navigate and evolve and control my overall customer journey. So for me, a big thing is really finding and vetting out those signals of a real partnership from the start. Not just the ones who are trying to sell me features and pricing, the ones that are really kind of rooted in what I'll call like a shared ambition and a true alignment from day one. It's not just a vendor who's trying to sell you a platform, but one who really wants to build with us. So I'm already thinking to step two and purchase 3, on day one with these guys. How are they going to help me grow, and how can I help grow with them? And I think it's a give and take. I've had a lot of kind of really interesting negotiations with them on like, I want this, but how can I help you? And it always kind of takes them by surprise a little bit when I ask that question of like, how can I also help you guys? Like, what is it that I can do? Can I partner with you on, some new products that you're launching? Can I help you with a case study? And even at times, I got slapped on the wrist that, hey, you can't just agree to case studies. Well, but it helped. And it really, I found go a long ways to building trust and building that relationship with them, in really building that shared fate and that shared outcome and mutual accountability. When you're actually building something with a partner, they want you to look as good as possible. They want to be able to use the logo, and they want to be able to stand behind the work that they've done. And, I think it brings a level of attention, preference that is really helpful. The other one is, someone who, again, has that vision from day one. So you can see that, they're not just slowly iterating on the product they've got today, but also thinking about what's the next kind of cutting edge evolution of that product, or of kind of an adjacent experience and product, and the ones that are going to help me stay sounding like the smartest guy in the room at my company and when I speak externally, right? So kind of willing down some of those insights and sharing with me, what are they thinking about, what are they looking at, and how can they help me drive my experience to the next level. Whether it's something that they're selling or something that they're thinking about or working on, I want somebody who's really kind of vested in a partner like that. And you can usually start to sense it pretty quickly. Who's going to make that cut and who's not is kind of where I really start a lot of my conversations as I'm vetting out products. So current technology, has to meet the requirements and the needs. But again, I'm always kind of thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead of like, all right, what's the future journey with these guys? And are they going to be a true partner, or are they just going to kind of sell me this product, assign me a customer success manager, and then be happy with kind of where they are today?
I love it. Ryan Dennis, champion to every Series A and B company looking to get a little bit more traction. We need these case studies. Thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Buy online, pick up in-store sounds straightforward, yet some stores hit roadblocks. From your view, why do tech challenges crop up with BOPIS?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think this is one, I've been in the trenches of launching this with Harley-Davidson, which BOPIS is hard for traditional retailers who own all of their kind of retail endpoints and have, systems that are completely aligned. I think they struggle to really nail it. And it gets infinitely more complex when you talk about hundreds of independent dealerships with different systems and different inventory management and different staff and you name it, but kind of live that. So I know a lot of these challenges very, very well and kind of successfully overcame them. I think the biggest one is making sure that your inventory systems and your order management tools are really, really integrated, so that you don't have, stock mismatches, or you can understand, what's being fulfilled or what's not being fulfilled. And you can help to, manage that and obviously track performance and make sure that you understand, who's working or who's not. I think the other thing that's really important is really making that store staff workflow really optimized and seamless for the duties that the in-store associates need to perform. Thinking about them, from a usability standpoint is something that's key, not just as someone who will use whatever kind of ugly, experience you put out in front of them. You have to almost think of them as a consumer as well, and make sure that you're engineering, the experience on the front end for the consumer, to be seamless, as well as for that store and staff, they're using it the right way and it's not delaying things or getting things off the rail. Think about things like, the alert messaging, the status, and all those other things that kind of introduce friction. And then this one, a little bit of a tech, a little bit of a kind of a merchandising challenge, but, also making sure that you've got the right products in your stores that align with what you're promoting or what consumers are demanding online, to give those stores a chance to even win at a BOPIS scenario. And then I also like to think about it as, not just making sure that they're aligned, but also then keeping that feedback loop open so that, you're sharing, hey, we're seeing strange demand starting to pop up for XYZ widget. Let's make sure that we're getting one of those either merchandised into the experience on the showroom floor or, even just sitting on the shelf in the back room if we don't have room for it on the floor, just to make sure that, as the system's looking and seeing where can that consumer get it today, that's popping up as an option. And so, I think keeping that feedback and having the tools to kind of keep that generating and going in a robust way, I think helps, win at BOPIS, as well as, helps you just become a stronger retailer in your physical footprint as well.
That's illuminating for me. Really appreciating that you're taking fulfillment and elements of post-sale support and data, like that feedback loop you mentioned, and now evolving your in-store associates and managers to now take on this new role for them. Let's keep going and talk about, ship from store directly. How does this new model then improve, say, your service times, help with costs, inventory turnaround? Maybe there's a way it changes the way that you work with channel partners. Love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for most, I would say, nailing BOPIS is almost like a must at this point. And then if you have physical and digital, and then I think the next natural progression is really that ship from store. Obviously with that, you're fulfilling orders from the closest retail location. You're shortening those delivery times. You're getting that product to consumers fast, optimizing your kind of inventory, fulfillment, and warehousing costs. It also can potentially be a lever for helping to move, slower moving inventory, and also turns your inventory, at those retail locations faster, which, for Harley-Davidson helped to, free up space as well as generate cash for, our dealer partners in that model. The other thing, for Harley-Davidson is it helped to give those dealers a stake in e-commerce success, making it feel even more tangible and more meaningful for them. As they're seeing those orders come in, they're fulfilling, from their retail or from their retail inventory, and helping to, create that customer experience, which strengthens the customer experience, but also strengthens that overall kind of partner relationship.
I realize that as we've been talking about this, I think maybe I've been showing some COVID-19 bias, looking at digital as first and foremost, and then how does it trickle down to brick and mortar when that is just like historically exact opposite.
Yeah.
So let's take that opposite view then. How do you amplify the physical experience into digital, sort of going the opposite way there? Or maybe a better way to say this is, how does AI personalization point the brand towards a more immersive, loyalty driving interactions that normally would replicate traditional brick and mortar?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's smart to interject, the value proposition of your retail experience into the online experience. So as someone's shopping, again, go back to like that shopping journey is not linear. We know that. I don't think many of us have great enough data to know exactly how it moves and shakes, but we know that it's not straight from here to here. So finding what those value propositions are, and making sure that those are interjected into your experience, whether it's an event that you're hosting, whether it's specific fitting or an expert consultation, or for Harley-Davidson, right? It's go in and someone can help you get the right riding jacket for you, or they can help you accessorize your motorcycle in a really awesome way that is hard to do, in a digital sense. You can't sit down and look through all the different options and really dream about the bike that you want. But in a dealership, you can do that. So I think promoting those opportunities, and then also understanding those moments in time where it makes sense to push people to go experience and see the new product, or even just reinforcing, hey, these products are now at the store. Go see them and check them out. Bonus points if you're doing a demonstration or something like that. But using AI to interject that, or just broadly putting it across. And again, this is where I think some of that content generation, you could test that in a really safe-ish way, right? Like if you're having a big testing event at XYZ retail location, using an image of that location, not just a generic, far too many times, right? You see this like absolutely glamorous retail location, and the one in my hometown here in Milwaukee, it's probably nice, but probably not the, the Taj Mahal, experience that they're putting on there. But, just again, building that stronger connection. It's like, oh yeah, I do know where that store is. I think those are great opportunities to, again, deepen that loyalty, almost motivate, someone to go to that location. If nothing else, maybe they're crossing by and they have a moment to spare, and they'll remember, oh, I was shopping for that, and they've got it there, so I should go check it out. Far too often it's a very straightforward shopping experience. We're like, just here's the pile of products, here's what's new, and we'll promote it. Giving consumers education and options on how they want to shop and how they want to engage, allows them to learn, shop, and buy the way that they prefer. So using AI and different on-site experiences, and even post-purchase, putting things in the packaging that remind them, to get a secondary kind of kick at, a retail experience, physically or digitally, is also helpful.
I always like to wrap up by shining a light on some big wins of our guests. By now, those war stories where you put out a fire or built something uniquely difficult. Ryan, could you share a story where your team faced significant hurdles and how you overcame them?
If you're talking about fires, I've definitely seen plenty of those in my day. I can tell you about the one time I was in Boston for a Harley-Davidson kind of dealer meeting, walked around for 15 hours, went to bed that night, woke up, couldn't walk because my feet hurt so bad. Saw that I had 20 missed calls on my phone, and found out that someone on my support team overnight had discounted all the products online by 90%. That was a fire. We put it out, but I don't think that's the fire we're talking about here. But a fun one. I think everybody's had a few of those kind of oops moments that we've all been through that make us stronger and make us laugh as we continue down the road. Obviously there's over the years, when you're in digital and retail, there's plenty of moments, where there's a fire, and it's just as many, where you look back and you're incredibly proud of the team, the resiliency, and, ultimately what you pulled off. I'd say for me, one of the biggest achievements is really, transforming, a legacy wholesaler, which was Harley-Davidson, into, a modern retailer in the digital space. And then also bringing along, a distributed dealer network that has, hundreds of independent locations. It's no easy task, and it takes a lot of very careful and methodical evolution to really navigate, those entrenched behaviors, those legacy systems, and obviously real concerns, about disruption. It's probably safe to say we didn't always get it right, but every day we were learning, we were getting a little bit smarter, and we were evolving and moving forward. We ultimately built that connective tissue between digital and physical, and delivered an experience that felt seamless and personal, really across a highly fragmented kind of retail structure. But we, really made sure that our consumers didn't feel that. In the end, we grew the business significantly, created real value for the brand, for our consumers, as well as for our independent retailers, which was a big win. So that's really what I'm most proud of. Building those big wins, bringing people along the way. It's never about a single project. For me, it's about that sustained momentum, and the long haul. that ultimately, really drive that significant transformation in value. A lot of times people will ask that, what's that one project? And, there certainly are ones that I could point to, but I think it's that sustained momentum and that thought process and having that vision to evolve and kind of continue to push through every single day.
Huge win. And I think it's quite obvious based on this conversation, done in a way that stayed true to the heart and soul of that company, but brought it up into modern times. So amazing. Congrats, Ryan. One final question for you. There are senior managers watching who will become the next cohort of leaders. What career advice would you offer them?
That's a good question. As I look back, there's definitely some advice I would have wished I could have given myself on day one, right? As I don't want to say an afraid, but maybe a little bit more, nervous and cautious, leader in the space that needed to have, some of those blow up moments and some of those major wins to really kind of figure out how to really set that pace. So if I were to really kind of give some advice to myself and maybe some others, it's really, that you're not just here to run a website and keep things humming. You're really here to push boundaries. So, don't be afraid to take chances. Don't be afraid to test boldly and challenge assumptions. The real breakthroughs come when you move fast, learn faster, and really rally people around progress and not necessarily perfection. So being ready to test, evolve, and understand your data and be able to scale or pull back or evolve, is something I think is really important. And I spent too much time in the early kind of parts of my career being a little bit afraid to be as bold as I wanted to be, or some of the ideas that the team would bring is like, all right, let's push it, let's take it. What has taken that 3 steps further, and let's not be afraid to get out there. And it might not win. Similar to my kind of earlier comments, I used to think that there was like one big idea that would change everything. So like if we just do this one thing right, that's going to evolve. It's going to take conversion from A to B. And it's going to be a step function change. But the truth is, it's really the sum of all the small intentional moves across the customer experience that really build that momentum. So, own that journey, not just the output of one kind of single project. And then the last piece of advice that I would give is, don't do it alone. There's an amazing community out there. And this is one of the things that, really got me excited to partner with VOX Wins, is bringing together, really smart minds and getting the best of what everybody's thinking about and how they're, testing different things or what's top of mind and how they're solving those challenges and sharing that. Get out there, surround yourself with incredible partners, vet them very cautiously and make sure that, they're going to be partners that are going to be with you for the long run. And then also find, generous leaders who are in similar roles or other businesses to really help you challenge your thinking. And then also use both of those partners as well as everybody out there to help you stay ahead in this fast moving space. And then lastly, as you do that, don't forget to give back. Your network will obviously return the favor when you need it the most, and continue to give you those, ideas, experimentation opportunities, or whatever else it may be. But getting involved in this community, which is a really great and inspiring group of people out there, is one that I think will help you be that much better of a leader internally, and it'll be more fun too. So don't do it alone.
I feel like we've learned a lot of the same lessons because I agree. I don't think there's been any better ROI than from human beings in my career. That's all the time we have. Ryan, thank you for joining us, as well as to our audience at home, doom scrolling LinkedIn. We'll be back next week as we uncover more of the evolving retail landscape and understand the consensus voice of its leaders, because above all else, VOX wins.